Okay, we are live. Let me get the camera set up in the tripod thing that I just made. Still working out the kinks here, but live from the Tortoise Room. I hope everyone is having a wonderful week. There we go. Oh. Okay, there we go. It's soaking time for these tortoises. I've got the Western Hingebacks here. This is a really interesting tortoise with a really special story. They have not been imported for a really, really, really long time, okay? These guys were the cheap tortoise from West Africa back in the day. They cannot be imported anymore. Back in the year 2000, oh, look at these guys. Did you see that? Did you see, rewind that, take a look. Those guys were just biting each other, okay? That is why these Western Hingeback tortoises just don't do well together. They will bite their faces off. So this is why they are only together during the bath time. That's it. They are kept in separate cages. Hello, Dragon Lair. Patrick, how are you doing? It's a snowy January night this evening here in Watery Wednesday. It's bath time. I love alliteration, and I needed a Wednesday theme, so that is the dealio. So I'm trying something new tonight. I'm gonna try to follow the questions in the comments in the chat with my iPad, and I think this will be pretty fun if I can figure it out. But we've got 4 people watching. Yep, thanks for coming. Okay, so this is working. I can see what my phone sees. So we've got the Western Hingeback soaking tonight. That is the species. This is the species that I started working with in 1998. Christmas break, 1998. I walked to a pet shop in Kent, Ohio, home of Kent State University, and found this amazing tortoise in a pet store, like in a 20-gallon long aquarium. I had that tortoise until 2019, but it really hooked me on this being my species. This is the West African Hingeback Conyxus no gooey. And they haven't been imported since 2000. The tortoise that I've had the longest, I got right when it was last imported. So that is a special animal for me, and really all of these animals are special because they can no longer come in the country. Those of us that are in the Conyxus working group, we think there are about 100 of these animals maybe left in the country. However, each year, new ones pop up. Something particularly interested about this species, and some of the other hingebacks, is that they are mean and nasty to each other. If you fast forward to 2020, when I first started hatching these guys, I kept them together. And after a little bit, I started noticing that they had these weird lesions on their faces. And I mean, it was really concerning. I was like, what is happening? I had kept Homiana and hatched Homiana for the months leading up to that point, and the Homiana did fine together, the babies. But these guys will bite the heck out of each other's faces at this age. So see if you can catch that. Obviously, we don't want it to happen, but once or twice, it can certainly it can happen, and I miss it. So the Western Hingeback, I love it. These guys have been really quite easy to hatch. I get like 90% hatch rates. So I'm hatching anywhere between 10 and 20 of these a year. Jeremy is also hatching 5 different bloodlines a year. So if you are really interested in working with a really cool Hingeback, these are a great tortoise because they're just a little bit easier to breed, in my opinion, and hatch the eggs than the Speaks Hingebacks. So, yeah, absolutely. I've been working with Hingebacks for a long time. I took a long break, really, from the world of herpeticulture, and now I'm back. I started back in 2018, and it's hard to believe that was 5 years ago. But at that time, I only had one Hingeback, and now I have many more than that. So, hello, Harlan. It's nice to have you here, Harlan. We've been talking quite a bit, back and forth. And Harlan, where do you live? Do you live in Morocco? Put that in the chat if you live in Morocco. But yeah, it's really great to have you. So, yep, these are the Western Hingebacks. I raise them up in tubs, no UV light, believe it or not, but I do supplement their diets with vitamin D3 in the form of Zoomed aquatic turtle food. This is, you can see here, this is what they're eating. This is just Zoomed aquatic turtle food mixed in with a brand new product that Capitolo Farms and Will Espenshade is going to be releasing. That's that green powder. This is actually ground barley grass. It's a good way to add fiber to their diet. So I love Will's stuff. And Will Espenshade, if you haven't met Will Espenshade, or if you don't know Will, Ryan and I on the Let's Talk Turtles podcast will be interviewing Will this Sunday for the next podcast. And Will of Capitolo Farms is a tortoise wizard, I'll call him. So I strongly recommend him and his company, Capitolo Farms. Because I have such a large group of animals, what I do is feed quite a lot of pellets, like Zoomed tortoise food, Missouri Original, Missouri LS, Missouri Croc Chow, Zoomed aquatic turtle pellets, but I supplement those pellets with the long stem fiber from the products that Will sells. So these guys get soaked every other day. They don't have water in their enclosures. They're very humid. They're anywhere between 75 degrees at night to 82, 83 in the day. Once again, no UVB, high humidity, 90% and above. That accounts for the very smooth shells. So let me know what questions you guys have for me about Hingebacks in general, anything about me, my family. It's all fair game. I'd love to dive in and answer some questions. So thank you, Harlan. I love when you leave me comments. So it's just so nice to hear your feedback, and I'm able to read what you write using the translator. So it's really cool to be able to know that these little tortoises, look at this. See, they're feisty little guys. These little tortoises are being beamed across the world. What's interesting about the Western Hingebacks, they're no longer imported to Europe, but they do show up in Asia. So there's a lot of channels and videos on YouTube that show the wild caught animals from West Africa that they show up in Europe. And, I'm sorry, they show up in Asia. They're still exported from West Africa. Over the years, I've been friended by Facebook people who go out and collect them in the wild. But yeah, they're just not imported into this country anymore, along with leopard tortoises and sulcatas. So Sebastian, the tips for establishing newly imported Canyxis. So how we like to describe the techniques for that is that you want to, in general, what your goal is to have a high amount of intervention but low interaction with the tortoise. And so the first thing that most people do when they buy these cheap tortoises is like put them in their family room or something like that, where they're really going to be disturbed, scared, there's dogs running by, blah blah blah. So you got to put them in a nice quiet space, and leave them alone for the most part, except you want to, in my opinion, overall, if you take all the species that I've ever acclimated, you want to give them and treat them like critically ill patients. Okay, so you need to set them up as if they are in the hospital, in the ICU. So you need to imagine that most of their body functions are not working. You need to get their kidneys working. You need to get their digestive system working all over again. And that's really hard, and it takes a lot of work and attention. So in one way, I'm saying leave them alone, but for 30 minutes of that day, or every other day, give them lots of attention. The first thing to do is get them hydrated, right? And get their kidneys functioning. So long forced soaks, I'm talking 30 minutes to an hour every day, and use a simple electrolyte solution. You can mix sugar, baking soda, and magnesium chloride and sodium chloride together in a very simple recipe to mix with your water, and that is going to make sure their kidneys are working. If you just hydrate with water all the time, they're not eating anything, then you're going to have serious problems. The other thing that most people do wrong is they start feeding them fruit. This is the worst possible thing that you can feed an imported Canyxis, right? Because you will mess up its gut flora so much, and that is just, it's not what you want to be doing. Will they eat fruit? Yes. Is it much better to get them to eat a protein that they love? Maybe some chopped beef heart, maybe a little bit of raw shrimp. That is much better. Maybe some boiled, softened sweet potatoes. It has some sugar, but not as much sugar as a grape or an apple, or anything like that. So hydration, check them every day, weigh them, hydration, electrolyte soaks, avoid fruit, start them off on protein. Right after you give them a bath, spray down their cage, make them feel like it just rained. That's when they will go out and hunt and start eating food. And then they'll eat the food that you offered them. If you just have a tortoise, like a hingeback, and you plop it in a hot enclosure and plop a plate of food in front of it, it is never going to eat that food. You have to replicate their environment and what triggers them to eat in the wild. And water, moisture, rain, that triggers their feeding response. That brings them out from the forest and walking around the savannas to get an earthworm, to get a slug, to eat those mushrooms that have popped up after a rain. So those are some good tips, and then you take it to the vet once you've gotten it stabilized, once it's no longer an ICU patient. That is when, you perhaps administer some medication. But I'm pretty. I don't like to zap these things, and I think we're finding out more and more that some of the so-called parasites may in fact be commensal organisms, right? So they are living with these animals in the wild, and it's only when they get plucked out of the wild do they actually become a problem. So if you can get the animal hydrated, the kidneys working, the digestive system flowing and working again, it's very possible that those so-called parasites may never be a problem. So that is a long-winded answer to my strategy. Now, that all being said, there's these Conyxus belliana, Bell's Hingebacks, being sold as Speaks Hingebacks, and I had them outside all summer. They did great. Coming inside, it triggered them to go in a dormancy and a decline, and I lost 2 out of the 3. Had I only had those tortoises, do I think I could have taken care of them better? Absolutely. Absolutely. So what we find with this species is that everybody, when these appear on the market, or someone says, hey, I've had this tortoise for 30 years and never had any other pet, well, they had attention. They had the attention to and the time to give that tortoise attention. The other big thing, people keep these in groups. Do not keep them in groups. Do not keep Conyxus in groups. Sometimes it will work. Behind me, I've got Homiana in a pair and a reverse trio, and it sort of works. But for the most part, they'll hate each other, they'll stress, and they'll just die. So what else? Anybody else have any other questions? We're going to try to do this Wednesday. Every Wednesday at 8, we'll do soaks, and 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll do soaks. We'll see what's soaking. We'll kind of talk about those tortoises. I don't have a lot of different types of turtles and tortoises, but I have a lot of individuals that kind of each have their own story of how they came to me. So every Wednesday night, we'll feature a tortoise or several tortoises and kind of share that story. Yeah, Sebastian. So, obviously these bells are in Florida. They're living outside at underground reptiles, we presume. And, I think maybe that's the answer. Although I don't know anyone, I haven't met a whole lot of people that have had any luck, right? But if you have them outside, that is the time when they didn't crash for me. Now, I started out with 3 animals, but one of those animals grew. The other 2 did not grow outside. If I had more time, energy, I would have kept those animals separate. But they were together, and maybe one was monopolizing food. Maybe I brought them in too late. But what we do know is that they have tested positive for TINC, which is testudine intranuclear coccidiosis. We have confirmation of this, that animals from Kenya, from this tortoise farm, that we don't know where it is exactly, or what it is, or who it is, but these animals have been testing positive for TINC. So if you have other tortoises, I would consider them quarantined for life. You want to wear gloves when you're working with them, and make sure the other tortoises cannot be associated with them. So, how long have you had yours, Sebastian? I mean, I got mine back in April, and they just they're beautiful animals, guys. We want them to work out so well, but unfortunately, what is happening is the same story that everybody told in the 1990s. Okay, so people just said these tortoises died and a couple lived. So when I'm 2/3 of the way through my life, like in 10 or 15 years, I think we'll be doing the same thing. We'll be assembling groups of survivor Belliana. Because Kenya is exporting animals like crazy right now, but that's not gonna continue. I mean, it's just unlikely to continue, right? There are very few countries that actually export their animals from Africa. Kenya, Ghana, Togo are kind of where everything comes from right now. The Democratic Republic of the Congo also exports some animals, like the Connexus erosa. So, hey, that's awesome, Sebastian. Share your experiences on the Hingeback group on Facebook. We would love to know more about what you're doing, and we need some captive bred babies. If you produce one, I'll buy it. I want to have a captive bred baby, and I love them. Love them, love them, love them. They, one of the big questions is, are they a real species? Are they really different from these westerns? And, they are quite a bit. The shell is a lot more domed. And in general, they're black tortoises, whereas, these guys are the brown Hingebacks. Speaks are also brown, but these are the brown and tan. Bells are the black and tan, and the eastern Zambensis are the black and white. That's kind of how I like to compare them. Well, this water's getting cold, so I think I'm going to get these guys some food. Again, here's their food, some Zoomed tortoise chow. Zoomed aquatic turtle food, and get them back in their enclosures. But yeah, look for a live every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Join me. We'll talk turtles. I'm a Hingeback guy, but I love all turtles and tortoises. During the day, I'm the curator for one of the top 20 botanical gardens in Arboreta in the country. So I'm also a plant guy. Very excited to talk to everyone in the future. So Wednesday night, 8 p.m. I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me.